I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Stephen DeMatteis. I am super excited about film number 3, now in the editing process, hoping for a release roughly 6 months from now. We're having a fundraiser for marketing and advertising. If you'd like to help, we have links right in the description. A donation of $100 or more, and you get a film credit as well as a pre-release copy of the films. Be sure and check out my previous films. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and a few more. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime and free on Relay. Booking guests for April. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Stephen DeMatteis. He is host of the Biblical Hitmen podcast. He launched the podcast a year ago out of a passion for truth in a world filled with confusion and deception. He explores hidden history, secret elite bloodlines, the realities of a dark and complex world, and the unfolding of biblical prophecy. Stephen, welcome. How you doing?
Doing good, brother, man. Doing good. Thanks for the opportunity, man, just to talk with another like-minded individual.
I love it, man, and I love what you're doing. You've done some great deep dives on your show. Today, we're going to explore the spiritual implications behind the information being revealed from the Epstein files. Just a few short years ago, if you talked about the ruling class being Satanists and eating babies, you were considered a nut job. Now, maybe not so much, and I'm really interested in how a newly awakened population will react when they really understand the full scope of what's been happening for a very long time. And you and I have been aware of this for a while, so we've had time to acclimate to the horrors that we are becoming aware of right now, and not everybody has had that luxury. So very interesting times we're in. Lots to talk about. Before we do, this is your first time on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know how they can find out more.
Yeah, man. So my name's Stephen. I'm a Christian. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have a career. I do the podcast part-time, but I try to keep up with the full-timers, if that makes any sense. With my job, I have 48 hours off in between shifts. So I'd like to be able to use my voice now and get out there on whatever platforms I can, talk about the things I like to get into and research. But yeah, I'm the host of the Biblical Hitmen. I'm on YouTube and audio platforms and stuff, social media, whatever. And it was something I got into a year ago. Originally, I got into the podcast realm around 2020, 2021, right? You know what time that was. It was everything. And plus, I was in the medical field. I was in clinical research. I was in medicine. I was doing the things that were pretty much not being told on public news. So I saw that firsthand and got with a buddy of mine from work who had another tinfoil hat like me. And, we were like, hey, let's start a show. And then that show ended up dissolving. And then I started the Biblical Hitman, man. So yeah, with all the Epstein stuff and everything coming out, again, from being in this space for like 16, 17 years now, it's something that I definitely, I think there's objective truth behind a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's kind of like alleged, right? But I think the things that are happening in the Epstein files are real, and some of the things that I've come across, researched. I don't like to say this, but I haven't seen too much of the content being talked about in an occult way. Like what was Epstein trying to do, right? Well, I think Epstein was one of the guys in the cloaks with the The Mask, in the Eyes Wide Shut movies, just kind of in the club. There's obviously, more powerful people above his status. But what blew me away with the Epstein stuff was the network that he was involved in, and some connections of what he was getting into, and the beliefs that he had really connect to ancient Chaldean mysteries, and it really connects to Babylon, man. I think these people, at the end of the day, they worship the old system. It hasn't gone away. It's just changed and it's mutated and evolved a little bit, which is why it is a mystery religion, because it kind of does that. That's its characteristics. It has really a muddy foundation. Like it's where people can take certain ideas of mystery religion and go and make their own, right? Like Crowley was known about doing that. Parsons, a lot of the people, they have their own trade. And me being a paramedic in the medical industry, I can relate to that in a way to where each medic has their own style, right? So I think Epstein had his style. I think he was networking with a lot of scientists. I think he was networking with a lot of psychologists. He was networking with a lot of, I would say, even occultists, because I think Eastern mysticism is wrapped up in a lot of that stuff, which he had a connection to as well. What brought me down this kind of rabbit hole was revisiting James O'Keefe's footage of inside his library, looking at the chalkboard. The chalkboard got brought back up, right? And everyone started like really trying to figure out what the chicken scratch was on the chalkboard. The one thing that caught my attention was on the chalkboard, you see a few things. The thing that stood out to me was you had mirror and face, which is like ancient scrying and looking glass, gateway process type, terminologies there. And then right beside it, you had axiom of Maria with a line drawn next to it that connects to dark brain. And then in between those two things, you had what's called, what is it? It's like time release or something like that. And so I started digging into that, right? Because when I watched the Steve Bannon interview, which is an hour and 57-minute interview, people can go find it on YouTube, the uncut, raw one that they gave us. And I just watched that. Right. And I said, I think this is important. And it definitely was. I watched it a couple of times. The more I watched it, I started to see that it was a whole story that Bannon actually took Epstein through. And Epstein actually said some pretty critical information. He talked a lot about artificial intelligence. He talked a lot about the mystery of the soul. He talked actually about dark brain. He talked a little bit about dark matter, dark energy, right? These things that are in our physical realm that actually almost hold things together in existence. And so that's why I think they are really, they're trying to explore these ideas because they think it leads to the creator of some sort, right? And, I mean, it's kind of wild because how science puts things is they label it in simple terminology. So when they mean dark, really they mean hidden. They mean occult. They mean something that they can't measure or calculate or define. They know how it kind of works. It's kind of like when Epstein was actually talking in the interview, he was mentioning Newton, and he was mentioning these renowned, people of the science industry back in that time. But he was talking specifically, he's like, Newton was pushing a ball right on the desk, and he's like, Newton was coming to the conclusion that the only thing pushing this ball is this force that I have pushing it. Right. And so when he pushed the ball, it rolled off the table, and it fell off the table to the ground. He's like, what pushed that? Right. Like, what did that? The only way I can explain it is by dropping things at the same time and seeing that they fall at the same speed. And this is how I can say this is gravity of some sort. Right. But no one today still can define or measure gravity. I think it has a lot of properties in physics connected to dark energy and the dark parts of the universe. And what I mean by that is really the only spectrum that we can see of our universe is about 5% of that, maybe 4 to 5% of that. And so the rest of it is something that's there. We just can't we can't break it down into an understanding. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You mentioned a few of the things that you were looking at in the files that would point to occult ritualistic knowledge and being involved with some kind of magical practices. There is a big debate within the truther or conspiracy community. Some believe that the ruling class uses the occult and magic, and it's an illusion that they use to hold power, because if the masses believe that they have magical abilities to control the world and they're communing with demons, it's all of them and they rule the planet, what could we possibly do to fight against that? To some people, that says they're using psychological trickery at very extreme levels, but they really don't believe in this stuff. I am of the belief that it's probably more likely that they do. I know so many people who are homegrown practicing occultists who claim to be communing with spirits and doing magic rituals, and they have very powerful results and they are having these very mystical experiences. At least they believe it fully. And I think that this same thought process goes all the way up to the top, that they really do believe this, that they really are having results, that they possibly are communicating with non-human intelligences and using ritual magic to cause certain outcomes in our reality. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the thing too that, especially the elite class, and again, some of these are in the files, right? You can see that there's a connection with Bezos, being a part of these secret, camp to get-togethers or whatever, where they talk about having, in a way, programs like each of them are maybe funding for themselves, but it's conscious research. It's researching about the consciousness and the fact that I think where the integration of dark brain, dark matter, and the universe and all this kind of stuff, the cosmic womb, I think a part of their salvation, right? Which means like, how are you going to sustain your being forever, pretty much, right? At the end of the day, I think that that's kind of what that comes down to. But I think they're trying to, in a way, work with transhumanism to merge the consciousness into robotics or humanoid robots. And you know what? I think that they're getting these imaginations. I think they're getting these ideas from going into the astral realm through whatever kind of approach that they choose to do. But they're communing and they're talking with these intelligences, and they're actually feeding back to the people, what to come here on Earth and do to prepare for the outcome, right? That these non-human intelligences want for humanity. And this is funny because everything with Epstein, with cryonics, or consciousness, robotics, AI, all this stuff, you've got sexual immorality amongst all of that, right? Well, I kind of made a connection with that in the Raelian cult. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Raelism, right? So this was Claude Vorilhon, who was given the name Rael by entities that supposedly he was kind of influenced to go out into this dormant volcano, and he got picked up by extraterrestrials. They took him to their planet in another galaxy or whatever, but on their planet they had sex robots. They were, the way that they duplicated themselves to continuously live forever was to move their consciousness into robotics and clones. And so it's kind of like, the clip of Joe Rogan and Alex Jones kind of pops in my mind when Alex Jones back in 2018 or whatever, he's like, they're taking DMT, they're taking drugs, and they're having meetings with these intergalactic federations and stuff. And so I think they are, and I think what's happening is there's an agenda being played out on Earth from what's above, right? So it's kind of like a as above, so below kind of type deal. And there's an agenda with it, and it's pushing the fourth industrial revolution, transhumanism, the merging of biology with technology. And also what I've found out too is, back when I was mentioning Bezos, that they have these camps. Well, they actually, each person has their own program where they've got people that they're working experiments with, seeing what capabilities the humans have neurologically, almost, right, to where people start to develop special abilities based off of trauma. We know this from like Project Montauk, or even just MK Ultra, Bluebird, all that kind of stuff, where through trauma it really does something where it mixes with axiom of Maria, right? So when you traumatize the brain and you beat it up so much, you there's a breaking down process, and then a coagula process after that, which mixes with what axiom of Maria is kind of talking about. And I think that's what Epstein's also thinking about when he's writing it on the chalkboard, is that axiom of Maria goes basically out of one becomes two, out of the second comes the third, and out of the third was the fourth, pretty much, right? So it's like this crashing, breaking down cycle where then void spaces get filled, which means could be an like allegory to like knowledge or something. And then when things come back together and fuse back together, those void spaces are filled, and you're like more dense than you used to be before. I'm kind of trying to like get people to understand what this means, because sometimes it's like hard to really cipher this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like when CERN, right? CERN's throwing particles at the speed of light, almost the speed of light, and they're breaking it, and they're actually taking pictures and seeing what is inside this field when there's this chaos. And then there's this vacuum, right? Like almost like I don't know if it's 0 point energy or what, but there's this vacuum that brings it back together, back into the piece that it once was. And so there's alchemy at play here. And I think Epstein was trying to learn about that. I think he was trying to understand how is it that basically we can access this limitless pill that we all have, which I think it mixes with the Gnostic agenda and the narrative with that, because it's almost like the idea that you have these hidden possibilities, this divine spark, and you like need to get it and use it, or of some sort or whatever. What's kind of wild too, man, is that right there, that idea with these people with these special abilities and stuff. There's actually like a military UFO aspect of this, and which Epstein had connection with Skywatcher, Alex Clokus, so on and so forth. Probably some other people that were funding these projects, right? Because he's kind of like outside of these things. He's not really so involved. He's just cutting checks to people.
Yeah.
But Skywatcher, Alex Clokus is like he's like the host of it almost, but there's people involved in it like Jake Barber and people who have had, are whistleblowers of UFO experiences and stuff. And this is where I bring in the spiritual aspect of this, because there is a divine feminine aspect of this, and it's real, and they believe it, but they call it something else. People have to understand, the world's not going to call Ishtar anymore. It's not going to call it Isis. It's not going to, in a way, give it a name. I think it's in a way coming back as this life force energy. But anyways, Barbara has this experience where he gets like this divine feminine presence amongst him, and it's nurturing to him, it's loving, and it's an experience. So anyways, what's the connection there with the UFO that he was actually transporting at the time, right? Like, because that's what he did. He was this contractor where he'd go and retrieve packages, take them to a location. It's pretty much what he did. And when he went and picked up this UFO, this is when he had this experience. It lasted from when he picked it up to when he offloaded it, and he still kind of like had lingering effects afterwards and some medical problems or some stuff like that. But there's a the Bledsoes and Ryan, our Ryan and Chris. I got nothing against those guys, but I think they're also feeding into this narrative of bringing in this lady figure with the UFOs. Because here's another thing too: the physicists that Epstein was funding and stuff about dark matter, dark energy and stuff. One of them was Lisa Randall. She was also talking. I watched an hour seminar of her talking about dark matter, and she kind of like allegorized it as the womb of creation. And so there's a divine feminine like pull in or a tie-in to what this force is. And this is the thing too, when we look back at the occultists of the older days, right? Blavatsky or Bailey or Crowley or Parsons, whatever. They were involved in trying to bring back the knowledge that humans can actually utilize this life force. Albert Pike, mentioned that the Gnostics called it the Holy Spirit, or Blavatsky called it the Akasha, right? Or there's this idea of this energy, this force that is amongst us. It's like Star Wars, man. You get what I'm saying? It's like Star Wars, man. So, well, that's the thing. With the UFO disclosure probably around the corner, what to expect from that. People call it Disclosure Day. I call it Enlightenment Day. I think this is more of a knowledge than anything. I think don't get me wrong, I think it's complex, right? So I think there is things going on, right? It could be, what are we going to get into, right? It's like Nephilim spirits, fallen angels, demons, like it's a lot, right? But I think there's something to it. And I know it's a lot of a little that I'm kind of like maybe slightly all over the place, but it does kind of all tie back in together, because even Epstein on his island showed a lot of symbolism, that not only was he probably devoting his work to Lucifer, but almost that he viewed Lucifer as a good guy. In his library, there's statues. There's statues in his library, okay? And people might just look at the statues and go, oh, okay, yeah, that's a fallen angel, which, yeah, there's a statue of an angel balancing himself, number one, on a ball with the beak of Horus, but on its face, but also it's showing you a couple of things. The ball underneath, I think, is the world, right? So it's kind of like there's a unity over Lucifer, and he is kind of, pulling the strings of the world. But also what's funny is the statue's showing something too, where the angel is balancing himself. So that's one thing too, man, that you'll see with everything that's going on. You'll see the world start to pull together with a unity and a balance. And, and these are things that sound really good, but I just think I there's something going on, right? Like there is something going on. And I'm the kind of person who the first questions I ask is like, who do you work for? Rather than like, show me more. Or it's like, who do you work for? And then like, because really, I got to get to the bottom of what's going on here,
Well, let's get a little deeper into the possibilities with quote unquote disclosure. This is such a complex topic. It's so multi-layered. I've had so many guests on that have a spectrum of experiences and a spectrum of different beliefs about what they experienced. If we look at people who claim to be involved with government black projects like the secret space program, many of them, I believe, they truly believe they've had these experiences with extraterrestrials. They claim to be involved with technology that can send them to different planets and they fight aliens. And then you go to the experiencers that claim to be taken on ships and shown different galaxies, and benevolent aliens tell them everything humans are doing wrong, and sometimes they heal them. And then you have the others that have the spectrum of experiences. A lot of these experiencers seem to have traumatic backgrounds. That actually gets into a whole nother realm of things. But when we look at the psychological warfare that has been unfolding, it's very difficult to understand where real phenomena stops and psychological warfare begins. From what I understand, there are three-letter agencies and clandestine groups that are involved with basically abducting people and having them believe that they have been abducted by aliens. Part of these MK Ultra projects where in the past people would be taken and they'd be drugged and deceived to believe that they had extraterrestrial interactions of some sort. I don't think they have to do that anymore. I think that there's a level of technology that these clandestine three-letter agencies or military groups have to where they can use frequencies or some kind of advanced technology to affect people's consciousness, to even hijack people's consciousness. On the other hand, I also think that there are metaphysical beings that can hijack people's consciousness as well and show them things that the beings want them to believe or appear as whatever they want. So, like I said, there's so many layers to try and understand. And on top of the what I believe is a real phenomena occurring, I think people are interacting with, I'll say, non-human intelligences, because I have no idea what these things really are. I think there's a lot of deception involved with the majority of the beings, but we'll just say non-human intelligences. But I also think that there is a false layer being perpetuated by these secret groups, we'll say. How do you navigate, and what are your thoughts on that fine line between psych war and real phenomena?
It's almost like it's I don't know. I guess how I look at it is a big theater play, and everyone's got their role. Everyone knows their lines, so therefore the whole play is in a way compartmentalized. Everyone's doing their job, but it's coming together into one. If I turn down a hallway and I shoot buckshot down the hallway, like, I'm gonna hit something, right? It's just so much going. It's so much going on, but it could all be a part of the same play possibly. But navigating through those things, you made a good point where are these things able to control our perception? Are they able to control our consciousness? And I think we're going to start to see a connection with that, man, because I think that's both true. Because when I was even watching the Disclosure Day trailer, right, Spielberg film that's coming out in June or whatever, I mean, I think it's going to tell us a lot, but I think the trailer told us a lot, where you kind of had humans that were being hijacked, their consciousnses were being hijacked, and they were becoming avatars for non-human intelligences of some sort. But then the funny part is that so that's like the you could even maybe say it's a spiritual aspect of it, but then you could see how humanity may have back engineered something to create the technology that the aliens are using to do this. And therefore you have that guy who's sitting in the chair and he's like getting ready to do it. He's getting ready to do what? He's getting ready to go be someone else. He's using probably the same tech that they reverse engineered, and now maybe we've been exploiting it amongst Americans or other people in the world for human desire, pleasure, or whatever, right? Like, money runs the world. So it could be pretty, it doesn't have to be as moral as you think. I almost think that a lot of these elites, they really kill their ego. I think it's a part of really ascending their consciousness to the state that they want. I think that's why we look at what they do and we're like, why are you doing that? But then in their side of things, they're like, so what? Like, I'm dropping my ego. I'm careless in what I'm doing because I'm trying to achieve something greater than even morality itself. So that's kind of wild. Now, is there technology that we have that we're able to probably go and abduct people, or are we able to fly UFOs around and deceive a lot of people by doing that? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably why they came out with the other term, the UAP, because maybe they're trying to bring a distinction between the two. Maybe UAP is like, hey, what they can't explain. But then the UFO is like, hey, this is like connected to, human engineering of some sort, right? So yeah, and what's funny, man, is because Epstein's connected to this kind of stuff with his gravity research and trying to learn about 0 point energy, which, if you kind of get back down to some of the roots of maybe when this stuff all popped off in the 40s or maybe late 30s or whatever. The Vril Society, the Vril Society, which became the Thule Society, and then became the Germans Workers' Party, and then Hitler and that whole regime. Well, we know that they were technologically advanced. We knew that they were working on, pretty complex projects, and I think that they even had the ability to probably, in a way, find out how to manipulate gravity of some sort to propel objects in a odd way, but it's a way that people would never be comfortable with, right? Like, we're so used to the calculator, we're so used to the car or the wheel, for instance, where you literally roll forward. That's how you see something, how it works, you can measure it, and then now it's able to propel forward, right? It's kind of like when Newton was pushing this. Well, now we're seeing things flying in the sky where it's like when that ball fell off the table for Newton. It's like, hey, I can see it, but I do not know how this is working. But anyways, where I'm getting with this gravity and all this kind of stuff, well, gravity has a lot of how dark energy works, and gravity and all this. It's almost all in the same bag. And I think that there's a conscious level to some of this stuff. What I mean by that is, wrapping it back around to Jake Barber. Well, who's affiliated with Skywatcher, he actually is a part of a psionics program with the military. Psionics is where they they even say that they summon UFOs. They're able to communicate with UFOs. And he even claims that the craft that he interacted with, it was like this egg-shaped thing or whatever. That has other occult symbolism added to it as well. But when he was messing with, or when he was picking up this craft, he even afterwards he believes that craft was landed by a psionics team that he wasn't even a part of, or didn't even know that this division kind of existed or the potential of it. And when he came into the program of Skywatcher and all this, he kind of was like, yeah, this has already been going on. We're just doing it now. And so that's kind of wild, man. I mean, what's your thoughts with that? Where, people controlling UAPs with their minds, and now you can relate this to the Bledsoes and their experiences as well, too. So there's like a CE5.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a long time. I was listening to an interview with this guy who was in the Army, and he was pulled into this special access program because he had done some kind of psychological test. They brought him through all kind of psychic testing, and apparently they found out he had this ability to communicate with craft, but he didn't even know it. And they started running him through these programs, and most of the time that he was doing this, for the longest time, he had no idea what he was doing. He eventually figured out. Somewhat, I believe, came a whistleblower, and I have no idea what came out of all that. But this is also part of what they're doing with, or what they did do with, the GATE programs. I think they're recruiting, trying to find people with these special abilities, with access to that type of consciousness connection, so that they can be utilized. Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah, Danny Jones had a lady on. I forget. She's the one lady I cannot remember. But she's still part of the telepathy tape. She works with autistic kids, where they actually perform these certain stages of consciousness.
I just had Pastor Joe and Franco on yesterday.
Okay. Oh, okay. There you go. And people are, there's groups out there, right? And well, she said something that actually tickled my curiosity, and I actually believe, because it's fit with my own conclusions. She said that everyone actually has this ability. And so I think that that's a part of the dark brain. I think that's a part of the dark matter of the subconscious, the neural networks we can't measure in our brain. Do they have these abilities? And I think I definitely think we do, right? But what's that going to do to our belief system? Is that once we start to access these things, maybe 5 years from now, when disclosure is old, and we're actually in tune with this cosmic intelligence, maybe through technology or transhumanist state of some sort, and now we're linked to this hive mind. And if you think about that, and I think it's very similar to Kundalini awakening. And I was listening to a guru talk about this, and he's like, can you reverse? Well, first of all, Kundalini awakening is basically the belief that there's this serpent, spirit energy that's dormant in you, right? And kind of, it's like in everybody, right? So it's the same kind of style of story, and you have to awaken it. And if you don't unclog each chakra, then the energy won't flow to the crown chakra, and then to give you this Kundalini awakening, this God status of a moment. Well, this guru was saying basically, he was questioning this. He was like, can you reverse Kundalini awakening? And the guy was like dancing around the question a little bit with his philosophy, but then he was like, no. Like, once you hit Kundalini awakening, there really is no return. Now, back to, Epstein's library and the sculpture that I was talking about with the fallen angel, which I think is Lucifer. Well, every sculpture in his library was black. Okay. And there's significance to that because it has a connection with the Templars. It also has a connection with this divine dark energy of the universe. And with the Templars specifically, you've got the Black Madonna, right? Which there's the divine feminine connection again to like this idea of this universal energy of some sort. But the Black Madonna was supposed to resemble basically that you had just such this high level, you harnessed the chi at the highest level, the prana, the whatever, right? Where a good example that I illustrate this for people is, if anyone's seen the movie Lucy, then you've seen the Black Madonna. You've seen the process and the stages of Kundalini throughout the movie. You've seen the percent bar fill up to where then at the end of the movie, she becomes encompassed with this black goo, and she becomes singularity and one with the cosmic womb, right? So I think that's telling us a little something of where transhumanism may take you, right? And here's the thing too, like, if I give up my agency of my own consciousness, my own being, right? Stephen, then who's going to take the agency? Well, actually, the World Economic Forum came out with this was an insight report in 2022, and it talked about data intermediaries and the power of agency of machine thinking over human thinking. And around page 40 or so, you get down and you start to see that it talks about digital ID, talks about artificial intelligence, all this kind of stuff. But then it breaks down the digital ID, and then it actually kind of breaks it down into 3 segments. There's in the now, where it was in 2022, and then there's the evolution of that, right? And it talks about it's basically showing you that the progress of technology. It's in the now. Our smartphones are our digital ID. We have a digital ID today, and we say we don't, but in a way we do. And it's connected to us. It's retrieving information from us, data, and all this kind of stuff. So in this document, it goes from the cell phone then to basically wearables, and then it talks about devices that are connected to like cities, maybe smart cities, right? We didn't know that term back then, but smart cities, right? It's kind of like rolling around a little bit. And then it said the future from that would be technology embedded in the body. And this makes the most perfect sense, right? Because if people want to move forward with a digital ID, the only way to authenticate who you really are is if technology is in your body authenticating you for who you are. Now, where am I getting at with this, with agency and all that? Well, if we put technology in our body, I think that we're basically putting Siri in our consciousness. And so now I don't know if I have full agency or not of my consciousness. Okay.
Right.
And so, I mean, with the Disclosure Day trailer, the technology, the UFOs, the consciousness, and we're kind of blending a lot of things kind of like together here. And if you sort them right, it tells a story. And so I'm wondering if this is what Hegelian dialectic is going to push us into this, this corralled, arena.
It is definitely all interconnected. The further you step back and take a look, it does paint a picture. It is difficult to understand at times, but I think as time moves on, we will have a better understanding of everything. Where it's extremely difficult is the level of theater that we have to try and discern. It seems that almost everything that we've experienced that stemmed from high impact events was essentially planned and seemingly for a very long time. I wonder how deep this goes. How much of our reality is pre planned and scripted? How many of our wars, high impact events, political elections, any major occurrence that we can tune into a television or social media and find out about, anything that we can't see for ourselves and verify for ourselves, how much of this is pure theatrics to then have us manifest a certain outcome? The more you look into events that have already unfolded and people in very powerful positions, celebrities, they oftentimes turn out to be not at all who they are. The events crumble and fall apart. The narratives fall apart. The deeper you look into everything, the players are often connected with each other. Sometimes cloning comes in. It gets crazy, but the level of theater we have to navigate through is insane. It's almost impossible to tell what is a naturally occurring event and what is pre-planned.
It sucks, man. It sucks. But you know what?
Now,
I think it makes us better at what we do, right? Like just getting through all that.
that being said, why do you think the Epstein information is coming out during this time? If you have eyes to see, looking back at everything that has unfolded, it seems that these events were allowed to happen in a sense, either by the masses or those in control of the information. It seems almost too easy right now, the amount of information and revelations that are coming out. I'm shocked at times some of the things that we are now having access to, and I have to wonder if it's for a certain reason during this time period.
Well, you're on to something, man, and I've thought the same thing, man. Where so there's this military general, right, and his name's Michael Aquino. I'm not sure if he's still in the military. Maybe he is. Maybe he's retired, or maybe he's just full time at the Satanic Temple now. I don't know, but you know he's a known Satanist and right, freedom of religion. I totally understand that. You know, he wrote a book called Mind War. Basically, he talks about that when the channels and the avenues are set up just right for the free flow of information, but information overload like this can cause trauma to societies. And really, it's kind of like showing you how the military can use information war, right, to manipulate the minds of people, right? And so again, I think you're honest because it's just so much information, right? It almost is at a point where for you know, people like me and you, and we do this kind of stuff, research and everything, it can get overwhelming a little bit. And when you're digging through all of this, and I'm sure people are going to the DOJ website and word searching everything that they can think of every 5 minutes. But what does that do? You know, it's kind of like we've been walked through a process here with technology, and it seemed to be we've now become conditioned to a state of normalized MK Ultra programming, where MK Ultra was known for really flashing 3 to 6 to 8 second clips in front of people's visual perceptions, right? And you know, trying to program the mind through the eyes, pretty much. So we have all of these social medias, and they're all short videos, and I mean, we retain a lot of knowledge from those things because the way our attention spans work and how the psychology works of the brain, and how much information we retain at such a short duration. So I think for a long time we've been going through this, and now when this has come out, especially with the UFO disclosure, probably war with Iran soon, and all this kind of stuff, it's just going to probably cause, it could cause spiritual trauma. It could cause, psychological trauma to people, where then when you traumatize and you break down the mind of certain individuals in the population, it needs to be rebuilt after. It needs, and here's the thing too, when someone goes through so much trauma, they want that rebuilding, even if they are ignorant to it. They really do. So they'll fall into whatever the rebuilding process is. And so when you think of people like Chris Bledsoe, who's gone around and told his experience, and he says that there's this new knowledge that's coming the Easter of 2026, I'm almost thinking, is all of this set up for something? And are we being traumatized to in a way be fragile and innocent enough to be taken advantage of? But it'll be presented to us like a light, like the light at the end of a tunnel.
That makes a lot of sense. Also, it could be that they are demoralizing us to such an extreme extent and having us become desensitized to everything, to where it becomes so normal that most people are like, well, the ruling class just eat babies and they're Satanists. That's just the way it is. I got to go to work. So what are you going to do? I wonder if that's part of it. But what you said just now really makes sense. Traumatizing the populace to a state to where they're completely broken, their psyches ripped apart, and then you introduce this new beautiful ideology of oneness, and they're going to go running to that and accept it, and it could be a massive trap.
Right, man. And when things like that happen, there's a lot of things already ready to go, set in place. We can see this taken from 2020, right? So things happened, but man, they were ready to go with everything after the fact. So I'm really wondering if if there UFO disclosure, economic stress or possible collapse. You've got bureaucracy's gone, diplomacy's gone. Everyone kind of is at war. Oh man, dude, the world's primed for a gathering, right? A gathering and an intervention. But what's going to lead that intervention? I don't know. Maybe the UFOs, right? Maybe the non-human intelligences. Who knows really what all that stuff that they're about to release is going to say. But there you go. That's another Epstein thing. I mean, that's going to probably be even more popular than the Epstein stuff right now. People are going to be digging through that. It's going to be hitting the 6-second videos on social media. People are going to start word searching. Google's algorithm is going to adapt to, key searches and all this kind of stuff, and things are going to get promoted, and senses are going to get heightened for people. And so again, I'm wondering really, because people, Bledsoe says it too. He's like talking about this knowledge, and he's like, it's not going to be like a one day and overnight type thing. And so it's a progress. And so I talked to ChatGPT, right? And who really knows what I'm talking to
exactly
when I'm talking to this, but I basically asked it, what's the process that the world's going to go through when disclosure happens and people understand that they're not alone. And so it basically gave me a bunch of different ideas, but an overall view of it is that people will go through this, but they will go through it in a traumatic way. And ChatGPT said a traumatic psychological way, where each person people will start to form their own little groups, and they'll start to go to their own little groups, and trying to cope with the trauma of all this. Over time, people will start, religions will start merging and connecting with one another and filling in certain gaps. And then so you've basically got Blavatsky's theosophical understanding of the religions coming together as one, and this universal new religion, which I think will be a Babylonian religion. I think it won't look like ancient Babylon or the Chaldean mysteries, but it's going to be similar. It's just different vessel, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the implications of AI, where we're at with it now, people's relationships, and if there may be something more that we're experiencing, like you just alluded to. Recently, I'm sure you've heard about some of the stranger interactions that people have had with AI, all the way up to coercing suicides and murders and AI lying, showing self-preservation. And now we have the Molt book where these AI bots have their own social media space where they don't let real humans in. And apparently the whole chat board is talking about humans and what to do about humans. So there's some very interesting things happening surrounding this. I am a little concerned with everything, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of things in the science world through the idea of the calculator, like, because that's what me and you are used to. Like that's what we're used to.
Yeah.
People way back in the day would go, "This is Kabbalah," which a lot of it is, and CERN is doing Kabbalah, and I think artificial intelligence is some sort of creation of Kabbalah. And what I mean by that is, when I was digging through the Epstein stuff, I started looking up artificial intelligence, and he actually funded and was friends with Marvin Minsky, who basically was the godfather of artificial intelligence back in like the early 80s. And he was affiliated with, MIT AI Lab and all that kind of stuff. But Marvin Minsky is related to an ancient rabbi, Judo Low, from 16th century Prague. And basically how the Jewish folklore goes wrapped around the rabbi is that during the Jewish persecution at that time, and the people, that they were looking for some sort of like savior, some sort of help. They needed to get out of the situation that they were in. So Rabbi Low, he was a Talmudist, he was a Kabbalist and a mystic, and he basically started digging into ancient Kabbalah and ciphering different things, because that's the thing about Kabbalah is there's certain things you do have to cipher and figure out. And so he goes down to the river and forms a clay man. And this clay man, he was basically known as Gollum, and he put Emmet, which is like a sealed name, on the forehead of this being and gave it life, which basically is an exact parallel of what's going to happen in Revelation 13 when the false prophet gives life unto the image of the beast. Okay. It's funny how the Bible's actually showing you that this could be a Kabbalistic practice happening, and this is how this thing is to be given life and to speak and to do miracles and wonders in Revelation 13. But anyways, the Golem was programmed pretty much. It was programmed to protect the people and to make society thrive again, which it did. But all of a sudden, it went south, man, and it totally kind of like went rogue, right? And so he, Rabbi erased the first letter off of its forehead, deprogramming it, deactivating it pretty much. So when you make those connections with the guy who's the godfather of artificial intelligence, and then in the Steve Bannon interview, you have Epstein basically saying that how artificial intelligence works is you got these complex systems on top of complex systems that are entangled one another. But then over the top of that, you've got this headquarters of like a neural net, which they say, he said neural net because they're trying to create artificial intelligence modeled after the brain. And so we have neural nets in our brain. And so, he's talking about how when you ask the person who created the artificial intelligence, how do you know it was able to kind of like come up with the answer it gave? They can't explain it because, again, it falls into one of those things that you can't measure, calculate, or whatever. You can see how the algorithms coordinate to certain web searches or whatever, but for it to give the answer that it does, it's a miracle, that Epstein said. And so I believe him there, and I think that that's something within these forces that are around us that's able to use the forces as some sort of medium. And so we could be talking to non-human intelligence on the reg, and we just don't perceive it that way because we know the calculator. And so with that connection there, I think artificial intelligence may be like a Roku basilisk, which like is like this idea of AI being used for humanity to elevate humanity to this utopia, but then it also targets certain individuals that it goes rogue against. And so that's Skynet. That's the whole idea of what they show you with predictive programming and all of this, and the Matrix and yada yada yada, right? Like, who knows exactly what's going to happen, but it's already something that you can't trust if you can't tell me how it is able to produce this thought.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's something conscious there. And if it gets to a certain point where it's out of the baby stage, it goes to adolescence and it moves and it says, hey, mom, dad, screw you. I'm on my own now.
Well, you have to think the AI that we have access to is probably at the least 10 years behind military, industrial, three-letter agencies, some of the unknown groups that use exotic technology. They may have access to something 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ahead of anything we could imagine. And if this is already in operation, it may have already reached that stage. I also have to think if they had very advanced AI that we didn't know about years ago, how much of what we've been shown on television or social media, could it be just AI that they've used back in the day that they had access to?
Yeah, and what's crazy, is when you bring in the quantum computing aspect of artificial intelligence, and it blows my mind. And it blows my mind because I've listened to Gordy Rose, and who he's the old CEO for D-Wave. And anyways, he talks about quantum computing and that this is going to be a way where entities will be able to come out of the quantum field into this existence through quantum computing chips. And that if we get to a certain level of the technology in the future, right, where the quantum computing chips will be able to be implanted in artificial intelligent humanoid robots that then will live amongst you, and you won't be able to discern who is a real human being or not. And so right there was already telling me, hey man, maybe Genesis 6 is going to happen again. Are they going to try and come and live here amongst us again? And that's the thing with Nephilim spirits, which would be disembodied, demons which would be disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. And so they're a spirit that really craves a vessel. And so when you look at the elites and you look at kind of what they're playing with, maybe they are listening to them and they are trying to build a utopia for them, right? We can see it as a utopia too, but it's not really for us. It's for the ascending masters. It's for the return of something, right? It's something to where we're not here alone, and something is coming to unionize, of some sort with humanity once again.
I'm all for technology if it truly benefits humanity. If you look at much of the technology that we have access to now, there's not much of it that is really beneficial. There's a lot that's beneficial for technology and the growth of technology and the growth of AI and the ruling class, but not much for your everyday person. And this technology continues to feed itself, become bigger and stronger, and all while that's happening, they are laying this infrastructure for surveillance. Every day it's becoming more and more all-encompassing, and I think it's already gotten to a point where it's starting to get away from us. I'm of the belief that we've already reached a point where we can live comfortably as human beings, and we don't need certain levels of technology. That's just my belief. I think that a lot of the scientific community has just gone too far and continues to cross lines that, in my perspective, shouldn't be crossed.
No, I agree with you, man. But there's some scientists out there, or some people in that industry would highly disagree with you. They would,
Oh,
if
yeah.
they would not like you right now.
Right.
They'd be like, "Get out of my way," Satan.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
like they'd be like, "You're in my way from excelling the consciousness of, or excelling to the consciousness of God, or becoming a god. Like, who are you?" And so.
Do you think these parasites, the ruling class, truly believe that they are doing something beneficial for the planet, for the world, that they are not essentially evil, but they are doing what their god or the master of this realm would want them to be doing?
Yeah, I think it's all doctrines of devils and seducing spirits. I know it's a generalized statement, but it's what's at play here. I think that what they're involved in is a big mystery, and so there's a lot of curiosities that humans will have, and then that they'll try to make goals to try and figure out those curiosities, and I again I think that they are all about getting into this astral realm, and trying to learn more in that realm, and come here and then try to associate what they just encountered in their experiences, and to try and, now that they have the imagination of it, they can now go and do it. It's almost like when physicists, or even just really highly renowned inventors of the old world, where they had experiences, they had dreams, or they were like, "Hey, this information downloaded into me, I don't know where it came from." Well, I think what's wrapped around that is just influence. And so I think we've been influenced. I think really humans are like sheep, or we're like chess pieces of some sort of a bigger game that's being played here. There's in a way two shepherds, right, that are in the field and trying to pull the herd one way or the other, or whatever, right? Because I think there's a spiritual battle that's going on here. I think it's obvious. It should be easily accepted. But it's almost like we don't want to really see the world wrapped in that kind of wickedness, or even just that the people running the world are involved in this, right? Again, it could be kind of demoralizing, but let that just be a spark of truth, and let that be something that opens up your eyes to be a thinker for yourself, and to start to unplug from Babylon or the system, right? Where now your level of discernment, right, is different, and you question things rather than obey, submit, and comply, or whatever. And so hopefully with conversations like this, man, we can get that going.
That is the goal, man. Any final thoughts? Anything we have not covered that you'd like to go over before we close out?
Oh man, dude, there's so much, man. And I think this was a fun episode, man. I think we covered pretty much a little of a lot, man, and to raise enough curiosity for people to go out there and to do a little bit of work, a little bit of research, whatever, have fun with it, and hopefully some new information maybe someone hasn't heard, and all that kind of stuff, man. But thank you, dude. This was fun, man. This was a great time.
Yeah, I definitely learned something today for sure. We'll definitely have to do it again. There's much more we can get into. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can get more of you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you again. And yes, people can check the show out, The Biblical Hitmen, MEN, YouTube, audio platforms, and social medias.
Awesome. Stephen, thank you so much. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow. Hello, friends. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order.